In my journey as a nurse, I've traversed various hospitals and facilities, each with its own unique challenges and experiences. One particular chapter unfolded in a geriatric hospital, just a stone's throw away from my home. Despite my familiarity with caring for older patients, this stint would soon present me with an encounter that defied explanation. It was a moonlit night, my second to last shift at this hospital, and I found myself assigned to the Alzheimer's ward. The patients here held a special affection for me, perhaps finding solace in the presence of a young caregiver amidst the labyrinth of their memories. Among them was Lena, a resident whose restless demeanor set her apart from the others. From the moment I entered Lena's room, I was met with tales of unseen voices and a shadowy figure that haunted her waking hours. While her fellow residents sought refuge behind closed curtains, Lena's fear permeated the room, casting a pall over our interactions. Despite my attempts to soothe her frayed nerves, the specter of her hallucinations loomed large, a silent reminder of the fragility of the human mind. As the night wore on and the ward grew quiet, I found myself ensconced in the eerie stillness that often accompanies the graveyard shift. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, each passing hour laden with the weight of unspoken fears and whispered secrets. Then, in the midst of this hushed solitude, I heard it. A faint rustling, a soft whisper that sent shivers down my spine. Startled, I turned, expecting to find a fellow nurse or perhaps a wandering patient, but the room remained empty, the silence broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the clock. As I resumed my tasks, a sensation washed over me, a gentle pressure on my shoulder that sent a jolt of fear coursing through my veins. I whirled around, heart pounding in my chest, but there was no one there. No hand, no presence, only the oppressive darkness that enveloped me like a shroud. Shaken but determined, I pushed aside my fears and focused on my duties, my mind racing with questions that had no answers. Yet, as the night wore on, a sense of unease settled over me, a nagging feeling that I was not alone in the darkness. Then, as if summoned by some unseen force, he appeared, a man dressed in black, his features obscured by the shadows that clung to him like a cloak. His eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, a smile playing at the corners of his lips as he gazed upon me with an intensity that chilled me to the bone. With a scream that pierced the stillness of the night, I recoiled in terror, my mind struggling to comprehend the impossible sight before me. Yet, even as I cried out for help, the man vanished, leaving behind nothing but the echoes of my own fear. In the aftermath of that harrowing encounter, I found myself grappling with questions that defied explanation. Had my mind played tricks on me, or had I truly come face to face with something beyond the realm of the living? And what of Lena, whose own torments mirrored my own in ways I could scarcely comprehend? As I sought solace in the light of day, I knew one thing for certain. Some mysteries are best left unsolved, their answers hidden in the shadows that lurk at the edge of our understanding. And though I may never fully comprehend the events of that fateful night, I carry with me the knowledge that there are forces in this world that defy explanation, lurking in the darkness, waiting to be discovered. The hostel, a budget-friendly haven for solo travelers seeking respite from the high costs of traditional accommodations. It's a place where strangers become temporary roommates, where stories are shared, and where unexpected encounters can leave a lasting impression. But not all hostile experiences are created equal, as these tales from weary wanderers will attest. It was a tale as old as time. Boy meets girl on a dating app, sparks fly, and plans are made to meet in person. Yet, for one traveler, what began as a promising connection soon descended into a nightmarish encounter in the heart of Paris. Fresh from a breakup and eager for a change of scenery, I found myself embarking on a solo journey to the City of Light. With a French girl as my virtual guide, I booked a stay at a hostel nestled within the bustling streets of Paris, eager to explore a new city and perhaps kindle a romance along the way. Arriving in the wee hours of the morning, exhaustion weighed heavy on my shoulders as I stumbled into the lobby of the hostel. The ambiance was less than welcoming, with a faint odor lingering in the air and a front desk attendant who seemed more interested in his phone than in assisting weary travelers. But I brushed aside my misgivings, eager to collapse into bed and escape the clutches of jet lag. As I made my way to the dormitory, I was met with the sight of empty beds and one lone figure hunched over a laptop. Ignoring my tired pleasantry, the figure offered only a vacant stare before returning to his screen. Undeterred, I settled into an empty bunk, eager to surrender to the embrace of sleep. But sleep would prove elusive on that fateful night. In the darkness of the dormitory, I was awakened by a sensation that sent shivers down my spine, the feeling of being watched. With a jolt, I scanned the room, but all I saw were empty beds, devoid of life or movement. Struggling to shake off the unease that gripped me, I attempted to close my eyes and return to slumber. Yet, as I lay there in the darkness, a sound pierced the silence. A soft creak, followed by the unmistakable feeling of movement on the bunk above me. With a sinking heart, I turned my gaze upwards, only to be met with a sight that chilled me to the core. There, perched on the top bunk, was a figure peering down at me with a twisted smile upon his lips. His eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, and his laughter echoed through the room like a malevolent specter. In that moment, fear gripped me like a vice, paralyzing me with its icy touch. I scrambled from my bed, heart pounding in my chest, as the figure continued to taunt me with his unsettling laughter. With trembling hands, I gathered my belongings and fled from the room, seeking refuge in the safety of the hostel's lobby. As I recounted my harrowing ordeal to the front desk attendant, a sense of dread settled over me. What had started as a simple journey of self-discovery had transformed into a nightmare beyond comprehension. And though I may never fully understand the events of that night, one thing was clear. The hostel, once a beacon of hope, had become a house of horrors from which I would not soon escape. When I was just 7 years old, I was struck down by spinal meningitis, a disease that would thrust me into a battle for my life. At that tender age, I couldn't comprehend the gravity of my situation, nor could I anticipate the harrowing journey that lay ahead in terms of treatment. It was my mother's anxious expression as she pleaded with the doctors to save me that gave me a sense of the dire circumstances. The doctors determined that a spinal tap was necessary to proceed with treatment, a prospect that filled my mother with dread. She implored them to find a way to minimize the trauma for her young child, but their options were limited. Instead, they proposed an unconventional solution: intravenous ketamine. Ketamine, a drug with a name that sounded ominous to my mother, was explained to her as an experimental treatment recently approved for human use. However, the lack of detailed information left her with unanswered questions and unresolved fears. Would this unorthodox approach truly save me, or was it merely a shot in the dark? As they prepared me for the procedure, I felt a sense of disorientation and apprehension wash over me. The hospital room, with its sterile scent and the masked figures of medical personnel, felt like a surreal setting for the impending ordeal. Clutching my mother's hand for reassurance, I braced myself for what was to come. The insertion of the IV needle marked the beginning of a nightmarish journey into the unknown. The sting of the needle sent waves of discomfort coursing through my body, and I cried out in pain and confusion. I couldn't comprehend the magnitude of what was happening, but I knew it wasn't good. As the ketamine took effect, I felt myself slipping into a state of dissociation, a surreal realm where reality blurred and time seemed to stand still. The sensation was disconcerting, like being adrift in an unfamiliar sea with no shore in sight. I clung to consciousness by a fragile thread, uncertain of what lay ahead. Then came the spinal tap, a procedure shrouded in fear and uncertainty. I was instructed to lie still as the doctors prepared to insert the needle into my spine. Every instinct screamed for me to run, to escape the impending pain, but I was held in place by forces beyond my control. The needle pierced my skin with a sharp, searing pain that shot through my body like lightning. I cried out, my voice lost amidst the sterile hum of the hospital room. My mother's presence offered little comfort in the face of such agony, and I felt utterly alone in my suffering. For what felt like an eternity, I lay there, suspended between worlds, a helpless victim of circumstance. The doctors worked quickly and efficiently, their masked faces betraying no emotion as they carried out their grim task. I closed my eyes and prayed for it to be over, for the pain to end and the nightmare to cease. When the procedure finally came to an end, I was left drained and shaken, my body trembling with exhaustion and relief. My mother's tear-streaked face offered a glimmer of solace in the aftermath of the ordeal, reminding me that I was not alone in my struggle. In the days and weeks that followed, I grappled with the physical and emotional scars left behind by my brush with death. The memories of that fateful day would haunt me for years to come, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. But through it all, I emerged stronger and more determined than ever before. I refused to let the darkness consume me, choosing instead to embrace the light of hope and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. And though the road ahead may be long and fraught with obstacles, I face it with courage and conviction, knowing that I am a survivor in every sense of the word.